because the amazing architect Frank Gehry, born in Canada, has created this architecture very much as a space for togetherness, for bringing people together with no boundary between everyone who's gathering here, whether it's performers or listeners. It's a very social, very unique setting, and you could almost suspect that Frank Gehry had heard about 6 Degree and then designed this hall for the project. There is also another story to it, and that was that he was very inspired by the West Eastern Divan Orchestra, which was founded about 16 years ago by Daniel Barnbaum and Edward Said. And Frank Gehry was very inspired by the whole idea for that orchestra, bringing young people together from the Middle East, from countries who were in a state of war, where people were not able to be in dialogue, and actually creating a platform where everybody was equal in making music together and proving that these people can function beautifully together and create something, make music together, not necessarily agree on everything, but at least become open to listening to the narrative of the other, to be curious, to at least listen to each other. And in a symbolic way, I think that creates a beautiful setting for today's 6 Degree gathering.
While Germany has become more diverse, we have also seen more confrontation and tensions on different fronts. People long denied equal participation in our societies who are now rightfully demanding a seat at the table. More people that feel sense of loss or unease about these changes who are becoming more vocal. And then there are those that openly reject diversity in all its forms. So how then can we begin to go about finding answers to these questions? And when we think about new ways in which to approach these important questions, perhaps we can take this advice as an inspiration. To engage the questions right now, even though we do not yet know all of the solutions. To have the courage to ask them honestly, even on things that we may disagree on. And to do so with an open mind to help us live our way into the answers.
Canada is often held up as a beacon light for immigration, for the settlement of populations, and we feel that we have done quite well, but we feel we have to keep working at it, and we feel we can always do better. And that's why the welcome here at this wonderful hall, built by Frank Gehry, who, as David said, is born a Canadian. We feel that there is some kind of magic for us to be here in Berlin, in this place that was just created about a year and a half ago, and we are very happy to welcome all of you. We want to hear your opinions.
And we're here to learn. We know there are many things happening in Germany that are very exciting, and there are many things in Canada that are exciting, but that also things that don't work. So it really is, we're hoping that Berlin will become our European hub, that will come back next year and the next year and the next year to Berlin and to this theater.
So diversity is a fact. Will our societies be inclusive, welcoming, and based on trust? Will they be exclusive, mistrustful, and driven by populism, xenophobia, and violent extremism? To make sure that our societies, our countries will choose inclusion, not xenophobia, we need people to build bridges, not walls, a truth that Berliners know better than anybody else. Diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice, the right choice, the way to make diversity a strength, a source of enrichment, and we're all saying is give inclusion a chance.
And we wanted to get the day started with a little bit of a temperature check. You know, we all come to these things with ideas full of passion and interests and full of incredible life experiences. And so we wanted to turn the next few minutes over to you and hear from some of you in the crowd about who you are and why you're here. And
I really like the idea about the dictionary and the language, but I also want to make a point that we have to think about visual ideas, because our world is so full with photography and it's so narrow what we see.
Today, you're the fuel, you're the fire, you're what's going to make this day work. what you're going to...
We have on this stage people from a number of countries. Each nation, of course, has its own reality, its own challenges, its own concerns, its own anxieties, its own narratives around these issues, and particularly very, very divisive issue right now of immigration and welcome. I'd like to start by asking the Mayor of Athens, Giorgos Kaminis, to tell us a little bit about how things are right now in Greece.
Quite difficult, I should say, from the very beginning, because in 2015, only 3 years ago, we had massive arrivals of people coming from Syria, Afghanistan, all over the world. And in less than a year, we had, passing from my city, Athens, 900,000 people. Now we have around 30 people that are stranded in Greece. 30,000, excuse me, 30,000. The main issue is that because of the economic crisis, those people, they don't want to be included in Greece. They don't want to stay in Greece. They want to leave Greece and go to other European countries because they have relatives there or because they can't find a job in Athens because of the crisis. And the second issue is the language problem. Mm-hmm. Many of them have a great difficulty to communicate in my city. Anyway, that is an issue that we have to face. Those people have applied for asylum, and they are going to stay in Greece, so we have the great challenge in front of us to include them in our society. That is the biggest challenge. In the municipality, we are trying very hard. We are from the very beginning very open towards that. The main issue is how do you talk not only to those people that arrive, but mainly to your citizens. Greeks are very sentimental, but you have to persuade them that these people have arrived, they're going to stay. The best solution for everyone is that they stay in a harmonious environment, everyone together working for the common good.
In the sea, there is no politics. If you are dying, you need to be rescued. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Integration is very important because, yes, of course, there is the right to be saved. There is the right of opening the borders of our hearts and mind. We need to push to do that. But if then when the people arrive in our country, they face a rubber wall, you know, they face a wall that do not allow them to be integrated, learning new languages, Italian, Greek, whatever, because they will be part of that country. Mm-hmm. So in Latin we say do des, so we are welcoming them, so we give, but also they will give to us. So I believe this is the first step of integration, is what we are doing also today, communication.
But what is quite frustrating or interesting is to see the discourse or the backlash we have now. What I talked, all this enthusiasm in 2015-16, this changed when we see the last 12 months or 2 years. What is quite frustrating is, yes, I would agree, we have to spend a lot of efforts into integration programs, but the discourse and the backlash we are facing is not always linked to the success we have in integration. For example, how we measure integration. Yeah. It's about social integration, integration into the educational sector, into the labor market, and the dimension we call identification. When you look at these 4 dimensions, you see that Germany did a quite enormous great job, actually. All the integration indicators are becoming more and more positive, but this does not mean that at the same time we have also the feeling in the society or the public discourse that this is going into a positive direction.
Et la question de la langue qui est au cœur aussi de la situation des réfugiés. puisqu'il se trouve souvent dans un pays où on ne parle pas la langue, sa langue maternelle. Et c'est la question de ma vie, mon aventure personnelle, c'est l'aventure de la langue. En Haïti, la langue maternelle, c'est le créole. Et on nous a dit, le français, c'est la langue du colonisateur. Et il est là pour vous écraser, pour casser votre identité. Et quand je suis parti d'Haïti pour aller à Montréal, on m'a dit que le français est la langue du colonisé. Il a été écrasé par l'anglais et que donc ce n'est pas un ennemi, c'est un allié.
So one of the reasons there are a lot of writers involved in 6 Degrees is because we believe that everything will be won and lost through language, without that in many ways the people who are not afraid, and I think 6 Degrees is about building a coalition of the people who are not afraid, or not getting power by being afraid or encouraging fear. I certainly believe that in a way we have been defeated. That the story of the last 25 years is that the people who want to make people afraid have won the public debate. They dominate the public debate in spite of the indicators, in spite of the success stories, and that really one of the biggest tasks is how to create a shared discourse in many languages, which is a discourse not of fear and of comfort. And knowing that that comfort actually will mean being comfortable with discomfort.
In every opinion survey, whether it is in Athens or globally, you see that the fear is more powerful in neighborhoods or in environments where you have no refugees or migrants.
Right.
It's the stereotype and the fantasy that creates this kind of fear.
That much of the atmosphere of crisis in Europe comes from the absence of the necessary structures. So, for example, there is in no country in Europe, maybe one now, but in no country in Europe is there a minister of citizenship and immigration. In every country in Europe, the question and the answers and the programs of immigration and citizenship come under the Minister of the Interior. Which is to say the Minister of Police.
Yeah.
So this is where the Canadian speaks. We have problems, but since 1867, we have a Minister of Immigration and Citizenship at the cabinet table. When the Minister of Security says, beware, fear, etc., the Minister of Immigration says, yes, but. I think there are all these amazing things happening in Europe, but I think the biggest problem, the basic problem in Europe, is the absence of the essential legal and administrative structures, which then make the conversation possible in an organized way.
Is anybody...
You said you have 300,000 people coming to Canada and you consider yourself as a country of immigration, and it is part of the constitution how you see your society, right? And we had like nearly 1 million people coming here, but we try to not be a country of immigration in the narrative and in the thinking about how we see us, or how do we tell the story about us. Yeah. And I think
on dit à Rome, il faut faire comme les Romains, mais on ne me dit pas quels Romains je dois imiter.
Right. Which Romans are you supposed to imitate?
Il y a beaucoup de Romains en prison pour avoir volé. Il y a des centaines de millions de Romains.
Don't imitate the criminals.
Okay.
Romans.
Qui sont pas intéressants. Et là, quand je suis le centre, en arrivant, je suis le centre de la vie, disons, actuelle, contemporaine. Le réfugié, c'est le centre quand il arrive.
Yes.
On lui explique que la société est complètement normale, complètement saine, et que c'est lui qui va être le problème.
Right.
Quand il devient citoyen, il comprend que tous les problèmes qu'on dit qu'il apporte dans la nouvelle société se trouvent déjà dans la société où il est.
Nobody's arriving in an ideal society.
No.
But what's missing often is this. There's often everywhere, including Canada, this idea you're so lucky to come here. Maybe in some ways, but actually, all immigrants bring something amazing that we don't even see in the beginning. And just We know statistically, boring, statistically within 7 years of arrival, the percentage of immigrants who become entrepreneurs is bigger than the percentage of people who live there. Why? Because they're more driven.
But I have just learned, talking to Uli last night, that in Denmark there is a pejorative word which means children of two languages, two-language children. Like that's a bad thing, that you speak a language at home and then you speak whatever language you happen to be in the country of, and that's a bad thing. In Canada, we've been struggling to get everybody to become French and English speaking for a long time, and we consider it a good thing. And the more languages, the better. I think it's all in that kind of attitude towards what is enriching to people. And the lack of fear is overcome through children and in schools. And they bring back that message to their homes. And the moment you have that is why we have to have a strong public education system. But government cannot do everything. Government does not bring direct human compassion. Government does not look into the eyes of the stranger. Government does not say, I understand you, or what are you trying to say to me?
I would like to come back to the topic of politics, and I think we should really talk about the politics of fear to remind us that it's a very conscious construction and how it's really instrumentalized. And I think it's very scary, even in liberal spaces, how normal it has become that we should be afraid of what's foreign and other. And the result is always, we should come together. And the burden is placed on the people that some people seem to be afraid of. I mean, it's like a child who's afraid of the darkness, and you blame the darkness for being so scary or something. And that's
I've been looking more into basic human emotions. And I've learned that sadness is something that you experience when you lose something. So sadness is a response to loss. And fear is apparently the anticipation of loss.
Okay.
So fear is an emotion you experience when you think you're going to lose something. And I think that this is something that we can't ignore anymore, and so we keep putting all of these populist movements, whatever, in a corner and blame and shame, but I think that as long as we continue to do that, we're only going to polarize more, so it's also important to take seriously the concerns of this movable middle, etc., and to understand what is it that they're so scared of losing, and is that a genuine fear, and can that actually be circumvented?
And thank you, Singh.
As Syrians, we just arrived to Germany as refugees. There's always was a problem with the terms used in the media, how the media tell the story of the refugees. And the very first term it's used, it's refugee crisis, this is a big problem using this. Like for me, if I'm hosting even my friend in my house, if I open the door and I tell him, look, being here, it's a crisis, and then whatever I will offer him, he will never feel comfortable. So the terms which is used in the media is very important to focus.
I work at Bard College Berlin. We have a student who has been in prison in Athens for 2.5 months now for trying to help refugees who arrive in Lesbos. She is a Syrian student who arrived on Lesbos swimming and pulling the boat that had 15 other refugees, and now she is imprisoned. And I don't know whether you know it. I would like you to know it, because we're doing everything we can to get her out, and the other young volunteer who has been in prison for 2.5 months. And from all you're saying, I think you have your heart and your mind in the right spot. This is very unfair what's happening, and it would be wonderful if you could support our cause.
I don't have the legal power to intervene in such a case, but I will see that at least this person has, the right lawyer and every possible defense from the part of the city, and I rely on 6 degrees to put us in contact.
John, with our last few minutes, I'd like 1 minute from each of our guests on identify, if you could, the single, what you think is driving force or crisis right now, or challenge right now, that we can take into the afternoon.
I think civil society actors and educational actors and policy makers have to think about how can we empower resilience, how can we put an end to the shift towards the right. We see even in the progressive social democratic parts a huge shift to the right. And my fear are not the right populists. My fear are those who call friends and then move to the other side. So I would say
resilience,
we should think about how we can empower the capacity of resilience.
Il ne faut pas voir une masse de gens qui doivent faire la même chose et qui doivent être tous de gauche. Qui doivent être toutes des gens qui seront bons pour la société. Les gens font leur chemin individuel, ils prennent leurs décisions. On peut être réfugié et individualiste.
And we talk about migratory crisis. Personally, I think that there is a crisis of humanity in this moment. We are facing a challenge. And this challenge can only be faced not just with the law, sterilized law, or implementing pathways that are important, but with empathy, with humanity. And
the fear of losing something is being exploited everywhere in the West as a desperate need to go back to the old model of the nation state. And the old model, the Westphalian model, I'm sorry, which won all through the West, the model was we're one thing, one language, one religion, one mythology, one race, this old model. So this is the safe position emotionally for some people, and this is what's being exploited. And really, what you're hearing today is, and what we believe very strongly is, it's so much more interesting to be complicated. It's so boring to be one thing. You know, we have to sell this idea that the idea that we're one thing is the demeaning idea of power. You're only allowed to be one thing. Yep. Whereas if democracy means anything, if citizenship means anything, if individualism means anything, it means we're allowed to be many things at once. And nobody gets to tell us what we have to be.